Hi guys, today we're going to go through the deployment of the Pet Clinic application. Our deployment pipeline is using Terraform, Ansible, Jenkins, a Kubernetes cluster and a webhook trigger. So essentially Terraform will go in and create the VM, create the cluster, create the Jenkins CI/CD server, and Ansible will be used to install the dependencies that our application needs to run. Things like Docker, Java, Maven and things like that. So if I go ahead and show you our setup for Terraform. So here we have all the folders that correlate with the infrastructure that we're creating. So the first thing we're going to create is the Kubernetes cluster. So if we go into the cluster and we do a Terraform apply, this has been already applied and created. So this when I run apply now, it's just going to go ahead and check the state and see if I've changed anything to the configuration, which I haven't, and it should confirm that everything works. And this takes a client ID, and this can be found in your Azure Active Directory. I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in. So it's going to ask me for the secret, as this is kind of a way of validating applications to access Azure resources. Just going to go ahead and confirm for us. As you can see, it's just refreshing the state. So it's gone ahead and confirm that we've created this cluster. As you can see, it's called Pet Clinic. Yeah, and it outputs the token and the certificate if you need that for authorization. Next thing we're going to do is create the Jenkins machine and the cluster controller, which is used to control our cluster. So here we have the Jenkins folder. We're inside the Terraform Jenkins folder, and we're going to run a Terraform apply. And this is just going to go ahead and check that our configuration is how we want it to be, and refresh the state. As you can see, it's applied the changes that we've requested. Obviously we've not made any changes, so it's not changed anything, but it has shown that the IP is up and running. This is Jenkins IP, and the next step is to create our Kubernetes controller. So if you can see, we've got a cluster controller here. So if we just go inside cluster controller and run Terraform apply, this should create this this infrastructure for us. So here's the output, and these outputs are defined within a file called output, and you can reference different variables that Terraform uses. So here we have the Kubernetes IP here, and all these machines have been set up now. So if I go back a one directory, we've set up the cluster controller, Jenkins, and the Kubernetes cluster. And now because we're using Ansible, we're going to need to export the IPs of these two machines into Ansible, so Ansible can do its thing and install the applications. So there's a little script that we created, so it's inside this folder here, and it's called export IPs for Ansible. So if I do bash export IPs for Ansible, that should export it. And now we have to export the one from the cluster controller. So if I go into the cluster controller and I say ls, and I do IP output to Ansible. Perfect. Okay, now we can confirm that this worked by just going into the Ansible directory, and just clear this. And you can see we've got inventory file, playbook, and roles. So Ansible uses the inventory file to connect to the hosts and know which hosts to connect to. So if we go in and we cat the inventory, as you can see, it's added the Jenkins IP and the Kubernetes controller IP. And now we're going to go ahead and run Ansible. As you can see, it's just going through and installing Jenkins. This play will install Jenkins, configure the entire CI/CD server, and give me the ability to just go in and log in and start my pipeline. So you'll see how this works after this, and we'll log in. As you can see, it's past the installation of Jenkins phase, and now it's going to go ahead and set up all the files and applications we need for the Kubernetes controller. So that's the kubectl, AZ-CLI to access AZ resources and authenticate all those things for us. It's also installing Node and Angular for as the application does run on Node and Angular, and we need those installed to test and build the application. In the build phase, we build we build Docker images using the files and directories that are inside this project, and then we upload those to our Docker Hub. And when we do deploy the application, those images are pulled from the Docker Hub and deployed on Kubernetes. So as you can see, it successfully ran all of those tasks that we required it to run, and now the next step is to run the build. I'm just going to go ahead and log into Jenkins. So as you can see, Jenkins has been set up for us, and yep, so when we log in, we see that we've got a pipeline, and we've tested this a few times already. I'm just going to go ahead and run the build. So these are basically, this offers a way of checking what is going to run in the pipeline. So if I uncheck one of these, it won't run. So right now we'll just run the test. The build takes super long because the file is quite big, so I'm just going to run the test and deploy right now. So if I show you here, it's going into each VM, cloning the directories in the project, and starting to test the front end and the back end of the application. And if those pass, it will build and deploy the application. As you can see, the tests were successful, 170 tests run, and yeah, so it's going to go ahead and test the front end now. Just while this is running, I'm just going to show you where it pulls the Jenkins file from. So we've uploaded the Jenkins file where Jenkins is uploading the script from, downloading the script from here. So you can see we've got multiple stages. We've got the test, back end, front end here. We've built the front end, and then this is the last step that it's going to go ahead and complete. Alright, so now it's at the deployment stage where it's using the Kubernetes controller and running the kubectl apply command and updating the services. Obviously we haven't made any changes to the application, so it's confirming that, and now it should give us an IP address. Alright, so it's outputted the IP address, and now we are using an Nginx reverse proxy to access the application. So that is working as a load balancer. So if I go ahead and load the application, so here you can see it's successfully loaded. Everything works as we need it to work, and the backend is running on a separate node in the Kubernetes cluster. So we have a front end deployment and a back end deployment, and those APIs talk to each other through the Nginx proxy load balancing all requests. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and